This video focuses on the content in Chapter 3 of the BUS200 book. It seems like nowadays that we are constantly in communication. We are checking our email, updating Facebook, taking online classes, making phone calls, satisfying our customers' needs, dealing with situations at home, resolving challenges at work, and even trying to identify with people with whom we may have nothing in common. And even when we are not saying a word and not engaged in any obvious communications, we are constantly sending signals with our body language and our facial expressions. And you can tell when someone is dissatisfied with what you are saying. Well, certainly you give off somebody's language signals and facial expressions when you are not hearing what you want to hear. So developing the communication skill is going to help you get ahead in your career and make you an effective manager when dealing with others. Now, side note here, we are always managing. Whether or not we have the word manager after our name is irrelevant. We always have to manage ourselves, and unfortunately, sometimes there's others in our lives who need to be managed as well. Now, just in my job as a professor, I have to communicate on many different levels. I have to be able to communicate with my students, not just in person, but in an online environment and even in video lectures such as this. I have to be able to communicate with my dean and my coworkers and support personnel at the college and security. And sometimes the communication is verbal and on the telephone or in person. I might send emails. I might go and visit the person in their office if the situation requires it. At my company, I have to communicate with my business partner, my employees, and with contractors, suppliers, and clients. I can certainly prefer a communication method over another one, but the truth of the matter is that I may not always have the choice on which communication method to use. Now, if I have a student who needs extra help, that might be best accomplished in person, and I might suggest that. If my dean wants to collaborate with me, then I'm going to let her decide on whether or not it will be a conference call or an in-person meeting. If I have to communicate routine business information to an employee, I might just send an email. But if the situation is that of a disciplinary nature, or if a project is highly detailed, then maybe the only way to handle that is in person. It also depends on the information that is being communicated. If I'm going to quit my job or apply for another one at the same company, I'm going to talk to my boss in person because I don't want him to hear that from someone else. I might follow up with a written resignation letter, but as this is a sensitive topic, the in-person touch might be the best. If I'm going to communicate with someone about a personal hygiene matter or a potentially embarrassing situation for them, I might take them aside out of the view of anyone else and whisper something. I might call them in my office and close the door. Now, normally when I lecture, I hide behind PowerPoint slides, and most of the time you can't see me. And that is great and convenient because then I don't have to worry about how I come across in video. But this lecture is on communication. Now, certainly I am not a professional communicator, and those who are could say that my communication skills have to be improved. But the way I present myself is custom designed by me for the people with whom I communicate. So let's talk about communication as a management skill. As a manager, you have to give direction to people in your department. That means that you need to be clear and direct in what you need to communicate, but you also have to communicate in a way that makes you approachable by your employees. The words you select will either motivate people or discourage them. And sometimes when you just don't have the time to be patient, you can select words that are less than optimal for the situation. And as a manager, you need to constantly remind yourself that your words carry weight and influence those around you. So as a manager, you are constantly selling yourself, your company, your department, your employees, and even your position. So the words you choose should convince those around you that you will cooperate with them and help them meet their needs. After all, if you have a problem and you have the choice of one of two managers with whom you're going to speak, you're going to select the manager who communicates the best, listens carefully, gives you time to express yourself, and the one who is most effective. I think the hardest thing to master is the ability to listen. I can tell when a person is listening when I am talking to them. I can see it in their eyes, with their eye contact, in their body language, and in the types of responses they give me. As a manager, I have to listen. I also have to listen as an employee. Not everyone is a good communicator, and sometimes it will take longer than we think it should for someone to get their point across. That is when the ability to listen is challenged. You might have to listen to an employee explain to you an obstacle that they're having on a contract for 30 minutes. Maybe you could have said it all in 5 minutes, but that employee needed more. And if you can't resign yourself to listening, then you may miss important morsels of information that are being communicated to you by the people around you. Now, I have found that in persuading people, that is determined much earlier in my interaction with someone, especially if I oppose their ideas. If I have listened to them, asked questions, engaged them, and given them ample opportunity to explain their point of view, or their objectives, their concerns, their hesitations, then I have collected a vast pool of information from them that will help me persuade them later. So in Chapter 3, we're going to be experimenting with several different types of communication. We're going to try and develop those skills throughout the entire semester. But even in the online classes, we need to develop communication skills that go well beyond the discussion board and email. So for those of you who typically avoid one type of communication method or another, this may prove to be a stressful chapter, but hopefully we will learn a lot more about ourselves and develop some skills that we're lacking. Thank you.